And thank you for the picture of my cooking. I'm not going to say which cake I made. But what a great example of virtual process engineering, digital twinning to ensure consistency of distributed manufacturing. And of course, for those that don't know, the chemical bulletin that we've recently done as EEF shows that the Northwest region has the highest GDP for chemical manufacturing of any region in the country. So we are really at the heart of chemical manufacturing. So over to the panel. It's time for your turn as the audience to ask questions. Shall we start with the audience? Shall we start with a question from the audience? So one over there. Oh, one here.
Hi, Ellen Piercy from Unilever. I've got a question on a slide that you presented, Jim. So what manufacturers say they need before adapting advanced technologies, and talking about 80% saying it's about staff skills. And I wonder how much of that is actual skills needed in order to deliver Industry 4.0 technologies, and how much of that is making systems that are intuitive enough that anybody can use them within in a particular business already. In the same way a 4-year-old can pick up an iPad and find Peppa Pig very easily. Is it? How does that split fit?
Yeah, the interesting thing that we pick up is just having the digital capability on its own isn't necessarily going to deliver results in your organization, but actually the point you make about, yes, the fact that Apple technology or Android is the way that we as consumers interact with digital apps and capabilities important. So I think as far as the technologies that will work in your organization should replicate that, but with regard to the skills, it's very much making sure that as an organization you have enough of an understanding to be able to make sure whatever it is that you implement and change delivers the benefits you need. So you need to understand your product, you need to understand how you make it, how you distribute it, and then and what digital skills do you need to lay over the top of that to make sure that actually you can embrace technology that actually is right and will deliver results for you as an organization. So that's what that slide tells me.
Thank you. Does anybody else on the panel want to comment on skills? Look inside it. I think there was another question over that side of the room. Thank you.
Thank you. Andrew Sparrow, Hagen Co. I wanted to get my question in before I ended up being a robot, I think, next year. I'm in recruiting, talent acquisition, I think we like to call it these days. I enjoyed the skill shortage of the late 90s with the millennial bug, which threatened us. And rode on the crest of SAP and ERP and all those great things. I see something similar these days going on. There's just a sheer shortage of skills, and I think, Jim, you pertain to it. The funnel's out there, and we're working on solution architects for Industry 4.0, and we're finding reasonable, qualified, and experienced people. But firstly, one, there's not a lot behind them coming through. I'm wondering what we're going to do about that. And two, it's a pleasure to see some ladies up on the panel, because one of the people said to me, I need really good women, and we looked at 500 people, and 3 were women. It's scary. So what's going on in the skilling up of people out there these days?
Big question there. Do we have a volunteer to talk about skills and how we get more women into manufacturing and engineering?
Right. I'll start up just a couple of insights. So I think one of the big issues, and I think Jürgen Meyer mentioned this morning, is that leadership is a real issue, and that we can't really do anything until we kind of know where we're going. And we need to have leaders who understand what this digital revolution can do so they can drive their organizations forward. And then they can perhaps recruit the people that they need in their organizations who can carry it out. So we do have a skills shortage, but I think we need to start with the leadership. In terms of women, it's an interesting point. We had a Women 4.0 lunch earlier, so we talked about this at lunch. And there are some issues, and some of them are really that it's kind of the mindset. In some ways, women, someone told me once that women will only go for a job where they know they have 100% of their capabilities, whereas a man will go if he's got 50%. And I think that actually that really happens. And similarly, I think recruiters will go, well, you know, I'm not so sure about taking on these women because, well, they're childbearing age or whatever. So there's a number of factors that kind of knock out women as potential candidates, and we need to push against that because there are women around. I mean, if we do look around, there are some, and they're getting more and more of them. So we need to positively encourage women to volunteer and go for these kind of jobs.
Philip, from a university perspective.
Yeah, from the university perspective, actually chemical engineering has the highest proportion of women as any of the engineering disciplines. So in our course in Manchester, it's about 30%. But we put a lot of effort into going into schools and trying to persuade school children to study sort of science and engineering. And we have sort of several female professors, for example, and it helps, I think, the girls actually seeing female role models and going into schools and showing it how science and engineering can be fun. It can be a career for them. But you having to put that effort in much earlier in the school careers now. So by the time they choose GCSE, sometimes it can be too late. Doors have closed, so it's going in even to primary schools to try and get that interest. So there is a lot of effort that goes into it at the moment.
And it's not just the youngsters, is it? It's the teachers and the parents that we need to educate. And so, you know, the challenge is out, I think, to every business to engage with their local schools and get the message out that manufacturing is still alive and well and is an exciting place to work. Don't you agree? Jim, do you want to say?
Yeah, I think the emerging technologies are attractive to people that historically probably wouldn't have thought about a career in manufacturing. I think there are some really simple things we can do. Actually, if I write a job profile and the opportunities around an opportunity within an organisation, it's probably going to attract people that look and sound like me. Actually, if we write those things in a very different way and we approach women particularly to opportunities in industry in a very different way, then actually, do you know what, I think we'll get different results. So there's some pretty basic stuff actually that we can do to maybe start to change some of those historic sort of approaches. Simple things that we can do now.
And we have to take the opportunity of asking Jeanette if there's anything different happens over in Germany to encourage. I mean, we all know, you know, it's a different profession. It's there with doctors and lawyers, but being an engineer. But is there something different that happens?
Yeah, but it's the same culture of seniority and so on. I can only share my very personal experience, like being a woman in engineering and getting that question over and over again. I'm deeply convinced, yes, we need role models, but with those we need the self-confidence to say that I'm sitting here and trying to convince young people to take an engineer's job because it's the greatest job on earth to be part of an engineer's generation that is shaping a revolution. I take that very seriously and emotionally. And then it doesn't matter which gender I am. So that's where I'm totally convinced. Like when I reach out to young ladies and boys, I tell them, as you pointed out, it's not about only using the technology, but it's being in charge of creating it, specifying it, putting it into place, making it happen. And with that, we are a mighty force, not with the best self-marketing when it comes to engineering, and that's the same in Germany, but like we are the ones who actually shape that, and we should be in the driver's seat of all the ongoing discussions in society and so on. And so this is what I try to motivate when I speak with young people, trying to convince them what responsibility have with the engineer's job, and then the job in total gets more interesting. And in the end up, we need that self-confidence that when you want to stay innovative, you need diverse teams, and this is not only a matter of gender, but also cultural background, opinions background, religion, age, all that. And this is what we have to make clear, but stay self-confident and say, this is how we want it to be, it shall be colorful. So this is what I can share on the topics, and not see it as a problem, but simply this is where we want to head and take that as something totally natural.
What a great advocate and salesman. And I have to say, money does talk, doesn't it? Because the average salary in manufacturing and engineering is over £30,000 a year. The average salary in the service sector is 26,500. So when you're talking to your kids, this is the place to work. Andy, do you want to add anything? Or?
Yeah, I think there's two things. So it's a very good question, I think. So I think in terms of the first question of a general skills gap, I completely agree with you. So we try to recruit a lot of graduates here in UK. And what we're looking for, to be honest with you, is not very specialist engineers or very specialist supply chain or very special digitalized people or even leaders. What we're looking for is people who can do all four of those things. And I think that's a very difficult skill to get at the moment. That's the gap that we've got in our organisation. People who can work across all four of those fields. And I think in terms of that second question, I like your answer actually. It's not just about men or women. It's about creating those diverse teams. And that's what we see actually, that it completely changes our business when we've got a very diverse team. I know when I started 20, 30 years ago in logistics, it was all men, we're all white, we're all from Britain. And now we've got men, we've got women, we've got people from all over the world. It's a completely different business. And I'm with you, I think it's a very, very exciting business world that these kids come into now, whether that's manufacturing, supply chain. So we've got to work hard now to convince them that it's a brilliant place to work, it's really exciting, there's lots of things to do. And I think that's our job now, to convince these people that this is a sector they want to work in.
Absolutely. Another question at the front here.
Yes, you almost all talked about how holistic it needs to be, Industry 4.0, and it's not only about digitization, it's the connecting to the ecosystem, it's the work process, it's the culture of the manufacturing. And actually, there isn't one person that connect all of these dots together. It's a full transformation. So if we implement via digital teams, then we are faced with a culture barrier, or we're not connected to the ecosystem, or the work process is not in match because this is digital, this is the person responsible for the work process. So how you get this to life holistically if there isn't that one person that can connect it end to end as your recipe, yeah, through the whole process?
Connecting it end to end. Who wants to pick up that?
Yeah. So
Jeanette, I think you're...
yeah, I'm just thinking how to start. Like I know there's some research on organization that while you had the last few decades specialization coming around with building up certain silos and nice process description in between them, we nowadays see that you become more innovative the more empowered cross-functional teams you have. So I think in the end it's not about being the one person, and it's also not the one top-down initiative. You always also rely on a bottom-up team-driven initiative, and then you end up with this organizational theories that work with guilds and networks, that you have to somehow find a way to get the right peoples within your organization connected and get that moving. Yeah, and that's the very complex answer, that there is not the one person that drives the change from end to end, but it's a guild or a network of people, or however you want to call them, that have to start and iteratively boosting that change through the whole organization. That would be my trial to answer that.
It is about teamwork and communication, and we saw the IBM model this morning where they could globally communicate across the different time zones of the world on a project. You know, there's the ability to do that. Andy, do you want to talk about?
I think you're right. It is a big challenge, and I think the key is the cross-functional teams. I see it a lot with the projects that we're doing. If it's led by an IT person and it's dominated, the project goes in that direction. If it's led by a manufacturing engineer, in that direction. So I think the key is trying to get, as you said, different perspective, different backgrounds, and that's the only really way to do it. Cross-functional teams, different backgrounds, all working together as one team, and just leaving it to one department to try and run these projects doesn't work. So for me, that's the key to get that group buy-in, that company buy-in.
Presumably, Lynn, you must see that in Innovate UK through the collaborative projects that you do where there are different
Exactly. We're
pushes,
always trying
pulls.
to encourage collaborative projects because it does bring the different viewpoints from different types of organization, especially when you have SMEs and you have academic organizations and you have large companies. They all see things from a different view, but when you get them working together, it's amazing what you can do.
Yeah. Any comments from the Philip?
I mean, from the education point of view, we're trying to do a lot more now with, for example, design projects that engineers have to do, looking towards groups or teams of engineers, not just chemical, but mixing together electrical engineers, mechanical engineers, aerospace engineers, putting them together to solve sort of problem solving. So they get used to working in teams and working with people with different skills. There's more and more of that going on. We do a sustainability challenge as well, where you've got people across the whole Faculty of Science and Engineering. So there's more and more of that going on, but it is harder work. For example, each engineering institution, Institution of Chemical Engineers, you can't sometimes stray too far from professional requirements. So we need to tackle those type of sort of barriers as well to get more interdisciplinary working.
So we need some of the institutions to be less siloed as well. Yeah.
Richard, for me,
Go on,
you've
Jim,
got to have leadership has clearly got to understand why you're going to start a project, and then actually once you've got that cross-functional team, actually give them the headroom and resources they need to be actually able to deliver the project. And yeah, you're absolutely right. Use external resources where required, but yeah, fundamentally it's that cross-team capability that really delivers a good project, given the right conditions to do so.
Cool. Thank you, Jim. Oh, we've got somebody with the microphone. I guess he's got the power.
Thank you very much. Julian Rüb from Newcastle University. I recently read a very interesting paper from Arcatech, the German University of Technology, or Academy of Technology, that's the right word. It was based on 150 interviews internationally with experts, and they mentioned that one of the key issues from the industry side is to figure out what data-driven business model arise from Industry 4.0. From your industry perspective, or even from academia, what is your approach on finding out what data-driven business models could arise from Industry 4.0?
Data-driven industry models driven from Industry 4.0. We don't have a hand put up. Jeanette, well, you're great.
Daily business being part of a business model innovation team. So our approach is that within my team, we limited ourselves that we are not developing technology. So simply to prevent ourselves to get lost in nice, happy engineering. But what we do is that we come up with hypotheses on that data-driven business models, what might work. And we think of minimum viable products as experiments. We launch them to the market, we see how things behave, and we exchange our experiences with the rest of our organization, and then decide on whether we want to scale that business at Bosch Rexroth or not. That's our approach. Like, I'm part of a 5-people exploration team. Like, it's really small, cross-functional teams situated in incubators. So I'm placed at the Bosch Rexroth startup incubator. That's how we call that Bosch. And so we have the degrees of freedom to work on that kind of experiments and figure out what business models might work. But the point is that we have half a year to test one, not 5 or 10 as it was in the last decade. So just as a very first glimpse on how we approach that. So that's daily business, has arrived. Yeah.
Andy, yes.
So I think as a logistics company, supply chain company, we have tons of data already, even before Industry 4.0. The challenge we've got, I think, is two sides. So now with Industry 4.0, we've got even more. So we were struggling with the data that we had before, and now all of a sudden we've got even more. The big challenge that we are struggling with in our company is what problem are we trying to fix with all this data? because we get lots of customers saying we need this data, we need that, and then we can say what's the business model, because there's time required to collect data and analyze that data, and they say we're not sure, we just feel like we need this data because everyone else has got it too. So from our business's perspective, the big challenge is what problem are we going to fix with all this data and information?
And Jim, your presentation touched on different sectorial approaches to Industry 4.0, which said it depends on your business really, I think, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. As I said earlier, some industries are far further down that road. Actually, there are lots of organisations that don't capture any data at the moment, or very basic data, and definitely not automatically being output from machinery. So yeah, I agree. It's all about, the challenge is not the data, it's all about application and what's relevant now, and where are the opportunities that actually data can help you understand for the future. That's the challenge, I think.
Cool. Philip?
Yeah, we do. In, for example, student labs, we have the students have to handle large amounts of data, but it's saying it's converting all that data into knowledge. Does it?
Yeah.
And it's that conversion to knowledge, and it's a bit of a shock to them to start with. About, do you just plot everything and hope something falls out of it, or do you do things in a more systematic way? Or so just being able to handle larger data sets and converting into knowledge. They start from from the first year in our courses.
Cool. Do we have another question? The man with the microphone in his hand up.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, Professor Philip, in order to deliver the virtual process engineering for the industrial applications, what do you think, where does science stand at the moment? Is it possible to deliver virtual process engineering reliably for industrial applications based on the physics-based modeling, or is going to be a long process driven by the data back and forth kind of? So what's your opinion?
Where is it at the moment?
Yes, so can it deliver virtual process engineering for industrial applications reliably at the moment, or is going to be a long data-driven modeling process?
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I hope I didn't try and simplify it too much, but it is at the start of sort of developing some of the techniques which we can then reach out to model real systems. So it's still going to take maybe 2-3 years, 4 years, 5 years, depending on the complexity of the process. So different products are more or less complicated. But it needs scientists and engineers to develop those, to start to understand that underlying sort of chemistry, physics, engineering. So I wouldn't like to say I could have a virtual model of that Victoria sponge cake, for example, to improve that at the moment. So, but it's not far away.
Cool. We have time for one more question before we wrap up.
Hi, it's Andrew Gordon from BAE Systems. I just wanted the panel to commentate on how they feel the United Kingdom is placed to exploit Industry 4.0 with relative to other countries, such as Germany or China. A colleague of mine recently just came back from an exchange in China, and he said the sheer scale of investment that's going on there, you know, kind of really impressed him, is that we're not the only ones in the world who are going down this route. And does the United Kingdom have a kind of USP in this space, or do we need to catch up? Or I would appreciate any kind of view on that.
I can answer that very simply. We need to catch up. Every stat that I look at says we're well behind China, Germany, and the USA. I think we can catch up quickly, though. So it's not a negative in the sense, at least we know we need to catch up. I think we need to do stuff like this that helps us catch up. But let's take the views of the panel.
I can jump in here. Definitely we need to catch up. And luckily the government see that we need to catch up. So one of the things that they mentioned in the industrial strategy is that it wants to get the UK to increase the amount of R&D that it spends up to, I think it's 2.5%, to try and get it up to the maximum, you know, the amount that Germany and China, everything are spending, so that we can catch up. So we're working on that, and they've put in a lot of money to enable that. We are lucky, and we probably put too much of our laurels on the fact that we have a really great research facilities here in the UK, and so we can use that to really help us move forward. But we do also need we need that bit of money that's going to take the research and get it into actual use and commercialization.
Infrastructure plays a big part. The fact that other places in Asia are just putting in brand new high-speed capabilities for data transfer. Lots of this country don't have that. Again, the government has recognised that, and the providers are looking to bridge that gap. So yeah, I agree. We need some fundamental infrastructure investment as well to help us leapfrog and move forward and catch up.
Yeah, I was with an SME in the Northeast a couple of days ago, and basically they took so long to download the digital CAD data because they were still on ADSL. It was just, okay, that was a few years ago. The fibre had come to the housing estate next door, but it hadn't gone to the industrial estate, So Jim's absolutely right. We need to catch up there. Philip.
Yeah, but so as you said, the research level, I think we're well placed in many situations. So some of the modelling I described, and then some like colleagues who are doing that are some of the best in the world at that type of modelling. But you still need infrastructure, so high performance computing. You need to do that, and we need to keep reinvesting because the Chinese are certainly doing that on high performance computing. So we have some of the skills in that area at the science level, but it's translating it into industry is where I think we need to push harder or pull harder.
Andy, do you want to add? Nodding ferociously there.
No, it's okay. I think it's an interesting question. I don't think it's quite so clear cut as are we behind or ahead. I agree with you. I think there are some areas actually where the UK is very, very well placed, and research is definitely one of them. Our research is here in the UK. We're a big global company, and we're picked here in the UK because of the quality of research in England. And I actually think now for UK there's a huge opportunity because of some of these changes that we're seeing. Additive manufacturing, putting manufacturing close to demand, doing repair here in the UK. Now all of a sudden we can compete with China. We've got a huge market here in the UK. So I think actually I see it more as we've got a big opportunity. We can move a lot faster than some countries as well. So I actually think the UK is very, very well positioned to take advantage of some of these changes.
And Jeanette, what's the view from the other side of the channel of how far behind we are or not, perhaps?
I feel remember of the German discussion, especially when I hear Acatech, every German engineer is doing like that because they're always reminding us that there's still the US and China and so on. So I guess it's always that feeling, since the race is not made yet, everybody is not so secure on which position he currently is, right? So I would not say who is ahead or beyond. But I find that thought very interesting, that of course also from a nation point of view and an economy point of view, you can think about the USP, right? And that is a good practice to make for a community to think about when you look on where you are, which domains you have in the country, what's the historic background, to find the answer, what might be the scenario, the right placement, where in Germany, we go into that direction to say, okay, we want to provide the things in the Internet of Things, meaning we see that we have a broad base of producing companies, and we want to turn that knowledge into IoT solutions. That's the approach in Germany, and I assume that you could have several thoughts also when you look on the specific circumstances in the UK that make UK unique, and UK IoT solution made smarter and made ahead of what the others are offering around the world.
I agree. What a great set of answers. Sorry, we've got no more time for any more questions. Please thank the speakers and panel. What a great variety. Thank you very much for your attention. We've still got the exhibition going on. Some of the guys mentioned their stands, so do go out and have a peruse and see what's out there. There is a networking drinks reception at 5 o'clock, and that will go on, I'm told, till 7 o'clock, so that sounds like a lot of drinks, but enjoy yourselves. Thank you for attending. Another day tomorrow. Have a good evening. Thank you.